Episode 3. Take it away.
Hello, people.
Yo.
I'm Simon.
And I am Phil.
He is. That's Shaolin Phil. And Simon the Cut. So we're live broadcasting to the world on YouTube, where we record our third podcast.
I don't like this live thing, Simon.
No?
It's people in the world that can listen and things.
And they could be anywhere, couldn't they?
No, I don't like it.
It's amazing. You might find your missus is listening back home in Vietnam.
Yeah, I think she's working right now. But this is our third podcast, as I said. And with the first two, we touched on various topics related to Portsmouth. I mean, this podcast isn't planned just to be about Portsmouth, is it, Simon?
No, in the long term, the reason we're called Pompey Eclectic is that we were both born and bred in Portsmouth. Pompey is the nickname of the city of Portsmouth and the football club. And the eclectic side of things is we're going to bring you a different topic in each episode from an eclectic variety of subjects.
Indeed. And
so what are we called today? What's this episode called?
Today, back in the first podcast, we touched on the very early history of Portsmouth. So this is going to be the second part of my legendary journey today. After our first golden nuggets. Every podcast, I've been delving through these tapes of mine, and they contain recordings of me and Simon back in 30-ish years ago. And
it was almost exactly 30 years ago.
And we used to sit on the hill and talk absolute bollocks, usually. But I've extracted some of these nuggets for your oral pleasure. And I will now play one for you.
And we used to play my guitar in the car as well.
Yeah, maybe we'll have some guitar later on if I find those. There's loads of tapes it's all mixed up in, but this one is called simply Life.
Tell you what, life. I don't know fuck all about it. And yet, we learn so much in our lifetimes. Who's to say what we learn is right or wrong? Us. Society says what's right and what's wrong. But why is it right? Is the whole thing right? Are they right?
The problem is society is the majority.
Society is the majority, yeah. So you've got to be the majority but if you're not with the majority, then you're thought of as stupid and outcast of human people in this world.
That was it. That's something to mull on, though, isn't it? What do you think? Have we changed since then? Do we still think that...
I like the fact that you acknowledged that you didn't know anything about life. That was quite wise, actually, for a teenager.
Because I learned since then that everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And learning things, actually, it's not worth learning anything, really, because no one knows anything. So all the things like we're going to talk to you about the history of Portsmouth and things like that. I mean, what do we really know?
Can we really, truly know anything?
Well,
I did file this podcast in the category of philosophy, so yeah, there's definitely a bit of modern philosophy about us.
We should do a top 10 philosophers at some point, but I think we should move on because we've got lots to get through, and it's time for...
Hello, this is a jingle recording for button A.
I saw you got the jingle sorted, Simon.
Yeah. Well, the jingles will improve. We may actually spend some cash on some jingles.
It's time now for, as I said, the second part of a legendary journey which sweepingly surmises the history of Portsmouth. Back in our first pod, we took a tentative and trepidatious tour through history, trundling through the tendrils, tentacles, and sometimes testicles of time. From those dastardly dinosaurs right up to the daring-do sea battles of Nelson. For this second part, I have again extensively researched and laboured away at great expense and tremendous amounts of coffee, consulting both the web, Wikipedia, and books in Waterlooville's amazing bibliothèque.
And there wasn't actually much expense, was there really? Just the coffee.
And I've now assembled what I call the Origins of Portsmouth, Part 2.
Orrible enries.
Orrible enries. Right, last time we discussed how Portsmouth and its domineering position in the south of England had grown from a calm patch of coastal crud into the big bad boss of the naval world, with its illustrious harbour, which put paid to pirates, pilferers and philanderers aplenty. Yet for all these unwashed intrusions onto its soil, there came a time when England got perhaps too big for its britches. Sick of being invaded throughout history by Romans, Vikings, Saxons, Normans, you name it, they decided to start doing invading of their own, conquering and colonising many countries of the world. In fact, there are only 22 countries untouched by British invasion
Really?
over the years.
22? That's incredible.
We could do a whole nother pod on this.
And there must be, 500 countries in the world?
Yeah, so we did go a bit overboard there. Now, this lust for invasion, of course, it was all down to Britain's leaders who wanted to make a name for themselves. In part one, I mentioned a particular king called Henry, later called Henry I, once there was more of them. And there's 8 of them, in fact. 8 of the blighters. Well, Henry he was the king of England from
Is he called Neo?
Don't get that.
Matrix.
Neo.
The one.
The one. Whoa.
Tenuous film link there.
Yeah.
I knew that button would come in handy.
Should have gone to the bathroom before I started.
Okay.
Anyway, from 1068, Henry I until 1st of December 1135. I knew that from a paper I'm reading off. I knew it from my mind. He used his dubiously won titular title to cavort with copious consorts and courtesans on top of his wide-ranging collection of won-over wives, producing enough potential heirs to fill an extra-large airship, if those had indeed existed back then. Anyway, I don't know about you, mate.
Why do I let you do this research on your own?
But I don't know about you, but if you look through the royals, this penchant for abusing power seems to be a trait among many of the Henrys who became king after each of their increasing in numerals namesakes. So before we get back to today, I thought I would briefly touch upon each of them, and while doing so, note their contributions, if any.
What's a pin shot?
To Portsmouth. What? Penchant.
Penchant.
Penchant. But you're speaking like a Frenchman.
Yeah, but that's how you pronounce it.
No, I say penchant.
You said pin shot.
Penchant.
Okay, anyway, sorry, carry on.
It's my accent which is involved.
Sorry.
Henry II was the next Henry, right? Also known as Henry Kirkmantle. Have you heard of him?
No.
Well, he was king.
Kirkmantle.
Yeah, Kirkmantle.
Oh, Kirkmantle.
Like mantelpiece.
Okay.
Well, he was king from 1154 until he died in 1189. And his mum was Matilda, daughter of Henry I. And she seemed to have learned a lot from him. I mean, if you had Orrible Henry I as a dad, you would learn some things, wouldn't you? About because he wasn't a very nice guy, and she passed these traits onto her son from the age of 14, fascinating his young mind with such materialistic virtues of vanity and military might as she coaxed him ever closer to the throne. At the age of 18, Henry Kirkmantle married the gorgeous Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was quite a catch on top of her looks, because she had huge tracts of land in the neighbouring country where she resided. Through her, Henry C controlled most of France. By the time the current king, Stephen of Blois, died, Henry had enough status to take over as King of England. And all this land and power went to young Henry's head. And he decided he wanted to control all the other factions that held sway within England, particularly the church, because they had a lot more say than they do now. And because of this, he had a falling out with his mate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was then mysteriously murdered.
Oh dear.
They were starting to see a trend with the Henrys, aren't we?
Yes.
But Henry, he also had a falling out with none other than King Louis, or King Louis, maybe, seventh.
Louis, yeah.
He was King Louis VII of France. Particularly because this Frenchman had more Roman numerals on his name. I guess Louis also wasn't pleased. Louis also wasn't pleased with Henry II also controlling a lot of what went on in what should have been his borders, thanks to his missus. These two rulers fought for over 2 decades. Henry doing considerably better, taking some chunks of France permanently for his own, including Brittany and Toulouse. You might say he had nothing to lose, but you probably wouldn't. Henry had 8 kids with Eleanor.
8?
All with Eleanor. He didn't cheat, apparently. But those kids turned out to be real brats. Oh my God, even worse than their dad.
And that's
You can believe that.
brat in the old sense of the word, not the new
Brat,
sense.
indeed. Having desires for land and immediate power, and that was while they're still in nappies. Henry tried his best to please them, but this led to lots of revolts and rebellions as they took stuff from other people and gave it to them. Here you go, have this land, have these jewels, whatever. But they were like, it wasn't enough. it just wasn't enough. 3 of his revolting sons, including one known as Young Henry, encouraged from the shadows by Philip, the son of King Louis VII of France, trying to get some payback here, he decisively encouraged them to defeat their own dad. In the end, after some scuffles, he fled with a bleeding ulcer and he died soon after that. Henry II died and he was succeeded by his son, Richard I, also known as Richard the
Lionheart.
Yes.
Awesome!
You know, I only said good things about him last time, Richard, if you recall in the first part, with Richard the Lionheart. But it turns out he's one of these spoilt brats who went against his own dad. So now all that good stuff I said about him, like, what? Just can't look at him the same way, can you? Anyway, time went on and it was quite a long time, in fact, till we get Henry III. He was king from 1207 until 1272. He took the throne 9 years old because there was a war on, you see. You know, there was this war called the First Barons' War. Have you heard about that?
No.
Oh, well, anyway, it was a war with some barons, I think. And who better than a Henry to take charge? It was a good choice. Even at 9, Henry was like, right, let's kill them.
And I guess, you know, if you take the throne at that age, you'd have lots of advisors anyway, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah.
You'd have councils of
it says
people.
kings don't really do much. They just parade around with their fancy clothes. And
I think they used to do a lot more than they do now.
yeah, but anyway, it turned out to be a good choice. After all, because Henry III defeated this rebellion at the battles of Lincoln and Sandwich. The latter I may have seen something similar to when I grabbed a subway in the Paws Grove the other day.
Oh, yeah.
That's supposed to be funny.
A fight out in the queue.
We got applause for my brilliant joke. Thanks, surprisingly, this Henry, also known as the Henry of Winchester, agreed to abide by the Great Charter of 1225, an update on 1215's Magna Carta. Have you heard what that is?
I've heard of the Magna Carta.
What is it?
It's a large charter. Basically gives certain rights. I think there are about 4 of the rights which are still effective even today.
Wow.
But it's stuff like...
Don't pick your nose in public.
No, it's fundamental principles of law, like the right to have a jury of your peers. You have the right to be tried by a jury of people who are similar to you.
Right.
Members of the public.
Anyway, yeah, this Magna Carta...
But there are 4 copies of the Magna Carta, and they were held, I think one was in York Cathedral, one was in Salisbury Cathedral, one in London.
Go and check out the Magna Carta.
I did actually go and see the Magna Carta in London, and one of the other ones, the one in Salisbury.
Well, this Magna Carta was updated in 1225, which is the one that Henry III was asked to abide by. Now, he's the king, he could have said, nah, sod this, but he went with it. And this limited royal power and protected the rights of the rich barons. So why did one of the Henrys did something like that? Because they were all power hungry mostly. There's a reason. Because he was a good role model. Because he had an idol. He looked up to.
Yeah.
Edward the Confessor, also known as Half the Knut. That was his idol. Because if you remember. Eddie the First, he was involved with loads of religious stuff. He did lots of good things. So these barons say, oh, this Henry, he's a bit into the religious stuff. Let's get him to abide by this charter. And because these royal types are getting a bit hard to handle, so let's rein their reins in a bit. And surprisingly, Henry did this without complaint because he actually worked hard as a king. It's like a job to him. It wasn't just like gallivanting around and cavorting with courtesans. He didn't leave all the crappy jobs to his ministers. He even did some himself, and he gave a lot generously to charities. So even though this Edward the Confessor was long dead, for some reason he looked up to this previous king, and he even went so far as to adopt him as his patron saint. It could be that Henry was also into this religion and his Edward's handiwork of Westminster Abbey, but he wasn't just a churchy-perchy, as mentioned in the last pod.
Did it say that in Wikipedia?
No, it might come up with that.
Churchy-perchy.
But as mentioned in the last pod, Henry assembled one of England's finest armies at Portsmouth's brand spanking new naval base. Finally got into Portsmouth, do you believe it? This is what he used to plan to invade France, because there was all this fraternising going on with France over the years. They went out, they amassed an army, they went across the English Channel, but then they got the heebie-jeebies and they came back. So it didn't happen, this invasion, but of course this Henry sounds all right, doesn't he, so far, this Henry III?
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as a totally good Henry.
No, there isn't.
And
It
he
seems.
this one has some downsides too. Shall I tell you what they are?
Go for it.
Well, he taxed the people a lot. He caused a lot of uproar with his expensive foreign policies and heavy-handed highway robbery-style taxation. To do this, he used some Poitevin half-brothers called Licinians to collect debts, who became notorious for their heavy-handedness, and they may have even coined the phrase, you want to be careful, mate, because things might get broken. But a more Shakespearean version of these words, probably. Henry, in his money-grubbing ways, especially went after the Jewish people of England, probably because of religious differences, as it always seems to be the problem, even today. But he took their hard-earned wonga away, and he used it mainly to build lots of palaces and hold lavish religious ceremonies. One of these, he married his wife, called Eleanor, like the other Henry. But it wasn't the same one, of course. They all seem to have the same names. But with Eleanor of Provence, he had 5 kids. But Eleanor must have got a bit naffed off with hubby's way of doing things, because it is said that to be likely her who went behind his back and talked to his consorts and convinced them to kick out these Poitevin thugs that were going around taxing, thumping people. They were rather uncouth, according to her, and that's what she did. But Henry III died in 1272 after a 52-year reign, which is the longest in medieval history.
Oh, right.
And moving on, another almost 100 years later, Henry IV, also known Henry Bolingbroke, he took power through force, overthrowing Richard II, his childhood friend and playmate. So he sounds like another horrible Knut. So basically they grew up together, these two, Richard II and Henry IV, but when they got a bit older, Henry chucked him in prison. This is a big problem, because somehow this contributed towards general disagreement and unpleasantness during the War of the Roses. You heard of the War of the Roses?
I have, yeah.
What happened then?
They had a big fight.
Who did?
It went on quite a long time, didn't it? This was the Tudors fighting.
That's right.
Was the red rose and the white rose, wasn't it?
That's right. I think, yeah. They were fighting over. I'm not sure. It wasn't about flowers. But Henry IV had 2 wives. The first of which he sired 6 children with. Thankfully, they were better behaved than Henry III's. But during his rule, or was that Henry II's? Anyway, during this rule, Henry IV encounters a lot of rebellions, including those from yet another Henry, the English knight, Henry Percy, also known as Hotspur. In the Battle of Shrewsbury in 1403, they come up against each other. And during this battle, Henry's eldest son, called, guess what? Henry was wounded by.
I thought you were going to say.
You know what? There's always, why there's so many Henrys as king, because they're all called Henry. It's hard not to get Henry. It's like when you used to get these packets of the Panini football stickers.
Oh yeah.
And Panini, is it Panini?
Panini.
Panini.
Banana.
I can't even say that. And they always got the same player, every pack sometimes.
Yes. They definitely printed a lot of certain players. So
and they printed a lot of Henrys.
Yeah, so they had lots of doubles. But then you could go to school and trade them.
You could trade them, couldn't you?
Like they used to do with cigarette cards.
I don't know if you can do that with kings.
No.
Unless you're playing cards. But yes, this Henry's eldest son, called Henry, he was up against this knight, Henry Percy. So things got a bit confusing on the battlefield. But Henry, son of the Henry IV, he got a arrow or something to the face.
No, another one.
Yeah, an arrow to the face. Boom!
Was it Rufus? Who was the one that got
Rufus as well.
He
yeah,
caught an arrow in the last episode.
Yeah, well, this one got an arrow to the face. This Henry, he became King Henry V. The only king this Henry V was, the only king to be crowned King of France. Very interesting, because the French were continuing to attack England all this time. By now, no one knows who started it. It was just fighting. People were hating over the sea. Let's just fight. And he's like, I had enough of this. I'm going to stop it. He'd had enough of this monarchy. He went over there to take charge. Can you stop all this cannonball flinging and swashbuckling? It's just not cricket. That's what he said. That's his words verbatim, apparently. In 1415, he prepared to depart from Portchester in the Trinity Royal, a mighty galleon, and on Saturday the 10th of August, on 1415, he ordered his mast hoisted up to announce to everyone he was about to sail over there and order all ships in the neighbouring ports to join with him on this epic voyage. So it was that 1,400 vessels carrying an army of some 6,000 men-at-arms and 24,000 archers were ready to head out across the channel that next day. And guess what happened?
A storm.
No, they did it. They went over
they?
there, and after some besieging, they had a historic victory at Agincourt. You may have heard of it, 25th of October 1415. So this was the big first victory over France. And Henry V, he also ordered the construction of Portsmouth's famous Round Tower as a naval defence in 1417. But it was it was him, and it wasn't fully finished for another 10 years. In the meantime, along came Henry VI.
I bet he didn't know that there was going to be a lovely cafe underneath the Round Tower.
Yeah, he'd have liked that, wouldn't he? Could have got a crusty roll on the way to his battles. It's a bit like McDonald's drive-through.
I thought you said Madonna's drive-through.
There's my voice bit.
Drive-through, yeah.
And anyway, along came Henry V. He was more of a landlubber, and they had all these ships in the harbour. He was like, nah, get rid of them. And he was pretty sick of all this navy luck. He sold off almost all his predecessors' ships during his reign. By 1430, the navy only had the Trinity Royal, the Grace Dieu, and Jesus left. That's all about Henry. I think that's enough about him, because he was an idiot. He just tore apart Portsmouth, basically, and they're all horrible. I don't like any of these Henrys. Henry VII was the next one, the first Tudor king. He had more sturdy sea legs, though, than his previous one, credited to be the founder of the Royal Navy, though this perhaps wasn't a title which he truly deserved. Sure, he did fix up all the fortifications, rebuilding the Round Tower in stone, along with raising the Square Tower in 1494. He also assisted one Robert Brigidine in construction of the world's first dry dock, as well as making foundations for building and repairing ships in Portsmouth. He did all this. But in terms of navy vessels, he actually ordered few ships to be built himself. He preferred to rent them, you see, from Spain. Those Spanish galleons were pretty nice, pretty tasty, so I'll have some of those. And because it's cheaper, a bit like Blockbuster's video back in the day. You know, you just rent a movie.
Great days.
That was a bad analogy, but
And the Square Tower is now a music venue, and yeah, I saw a gig there recently. And
how'd you get there?
how'd you get there?
Yeah.
By bus.
It's in the water.
No, it's not. No, it's near the water. It's right on the edge of the water.
The Round Tower's in the water, though, and they did that game show. Did you ever see that game show? It's a bit like the Crystal. The same person who made the Crystal Maze. He made this game show for Port Royal, I think. Something like that. Port, I don't know, but it was set on. They shot some of it in the Round Tower. There you go.
But you can also have your wedding at the Square Tower as well. If you want to get married, you can get married at the Square Tower.
That's cool.
Well, that's killed the podcast.
Yeah.
Time for button D.
Don't do it, man. You did it.
This is it.
Okay. Right. So Henry VII. He was a known penny pincher. You see. Why own when you can borrow other people's battalions for battling with? He didn't know the importance. Well, he knew the importance of having an imposing fleet, but unlike Henry VI, he thought all that water was enough to separate enemies. However, I'm not sure what the agreement was if Henry VII's lone vessels from the Spanish were sunk, or how much compensation would have to be paid. But I guess that was a wage he was willing to risk. Well, I might be doing Henry VII a bit of a disservice, actually, because, he seemed like a good lad. Out of all the Henrys, despite my seeming prejudice against Henrys, he wasn't really that tight. He probably just had the heart of a merchant. He believed in making every penny count, and often taxed the noblemen for a change, getting them to foot the bills. Today's governments could take a leaf or maybe a whole bloody tree out of his books, methinks. But that was the first good Henry, and there was only one more to follow. Were things changing for the better? Would this final Henry continue to drag his namesakes out of the murky depths, or sink them like a certain ship called the Mary Rose, which we will get to soon?
Oh, good. Yeah.
So finally, looking at Henry VIII, we might, everyone knows a bit about Henry VIII.
Everyone thinks they do, I think, but actually a lot of it is not. A lot of the common knowledge is not actually correct.
Yeah, that's why I put the record straight with my amazing.
One of the things is how many wives he had. I saw an episode of QI the other day.
Everyone thinks he had 12 wives.
With Stephen Fry, and people normally think, well, he had 6 wives, but actually, I think they said he was only married to 3 of them because there were certain reasons why the weddings weren't legitimate.
Well, let's not.
Weddings were annulled, or they didn't do the service properly.
Let's not get bogged down in logistics. They were wives, because I put 6. Okay. Anyway, he had many wives. He seemed to be going for a world record. or a king record. Well, if they were wives or not, funny enough, all of these girls that he dated and got serious with were all related by blood to King Edward I. They were all Knuts. They were quarter Knuts. But not only that, when he tired of them, he didn't just separate mutually. He was
Separated their heads.
Often prone to separating their heads from their shoulders. On top of this, he had heaps of affairs. What a lad!
Really?
Also, Henry wasn't a fan of the previous restraints on the royals since the Magna Carta days. Henry VIII used trumped-up charges of treason and heresy to quell any dissent amongst his idealistic views that kings had divine rights. Any naysayers were sliced at the neck or banished, including some of his chief ministers like Thomas Cromwell, maybe a relation. Aside...
To who?
we'll find out.
Surely not Oliver.
I don't know. It was around that time. Aside from his worrying preference to put an axe to his exes and colleagues instead of having a civilised chat, Henry VIII did lots of other stuff. Maybe his refusal to let his wives become widows was out of concern that they might go to the Anglo-Saxon Times and start gossiping about what lay beneath his gigantic codpiece, which could well have been compensating for something. Well, anyway, I digress. Among Henry VIII's accomplishments was his work in Portsmouth. It could be said, in fact, that he was the true founder of the Royal Navy, as, unlike his pa, Henry VIII actually got more involved with assembling a mighty battle fleet of his own, not just a rental one. Also, unlike his father, Henry VIII was a big spender and wore the most splendid fabric upon his ever-widening waistline. Henry VIII was everywhere during his reign. He cemented his name in history, perhaps more than any other king of England, or maybe the world.
I have seen his suit of armour. They've got a suit of armour in the Tower of London.
You can't get away from him. I was in Cambridge.
And he was quite short.
King's College built by Henry VIII.
Very stocky.
King's College, Henry everywhere. And he didn't lift a single brick. He put his name on it.
So did he build Southsea Castle?
He didn't build anything. He just ordered people to build it. These kings.
Well, no, I didn't.
What about
I didn't think he laid the bricks.
What about poor old Nobby with his hobgoblin Nobby?
Who?
Picking up the brick, putting all the bricks down. No one cares about him.
No.
He did all the hard work.
I don't know who this is.
Anyway, many of England's historic landmarks he had a hand in, or a shout in, including Southsea Castle, which he allegedly built in 1539 in anticipation of yet another French invasion. He got the money to do so from his dissolution of the monasteries. This is another sore subject of Henry VIII. He didn't like the church. He's like, oh, it's a waste of time,
What was
isn't
it about the monasteries he didn't like? Was it the fact that they had their own money and they raised funds themselves?
And what's this stuff?
They had a lot of land.
Why do you sit in this building and shout at sing to some invisible guy? It's silly. Just get rid of it.
Is that what he thought?
Yeah. So apparently,
because he was involved in changing the law on divorce, wasn't he? So that
because he
didn't like the churches because they wouldn't let him get divorced.
He just said, look, if
so he just found any way and every way he could to get out of his marriages.
He wasn't very nice. He got some money from the churches. He also invested heavily in the town's dockyard, using that money, expanding it to 8 acres, no less. Portsmouth Dockyard stretched from the Round Tower to Fort Blockhouse in Gosport Harbour, that far. Yet, Henry VIII also had the misfortune and humiliation, some would say deservedly, to watch one of his ships sink before his eyes in one of the most traumatic mishaps in all of naval history. Well, that was the Mary Rose, of course. This is a lovely ship, first built by Henry VIII, or at least the people he told to build it, in 1509 and updated in 1536. He wanted some new guns, which were state-of-the-art, stuck in there. Cast bronze muzzler loaders. They were swanky but heavy. Some people say it was due to this poor design, or it was the open gun ports which let in a bit too much water, which caused it to sink, blob, 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 in the harbour.
Yeah, I heard it was a design flaw, so to be, when it was fully laden, the water line would be higher than the lowest gun ports, which was a total design flaw.
And plus, I think Henry VIII must have stepped foot on it with his big belly as well, which probably lowered it even more.
And I heard he was standing in Southsea Castle watching as it sank.
Yeah.
Very unhappy about it.
He probably wasn't. He probably cut a few heads off that day.
Interestingly, there is a warship, if you ever go to Stockholm, there's a warship in Stockholm called the Vasa, which sank in similar circumstances in the harbour.
Really?
Yeah, they have a museum there, the Vasa Museum. The ship is there fully restored.
Oh, just like the Mary Roses.
Yeah, but this ship has been fully restored and it's been repainted, very colourful and laden with gold, inlaid with gold and stuff. Yeah,
So it was a
but
similar...
the Mary Rose, of course, you can see in our Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. But the Mary Rose is really, it's half a hull, isn't it? And it's wooden only. There's no sort of fixtures and fittings. And it's
there's only half a canard holding it together.
But we when we were at school, I remember it was quite dramatic. We watched the video footage of the raising of the Mary Rose.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
There was a big yellow frame, wasn't there? And they put that around the ship and raised it out of the water, and it got to that one point where it just peeped above the surface of the water.
Right, yeah.
And then the framework jolted and sunk back in. A desperate moment there where everyone thought the project had gone completely wrong.
The project manager looked a bit like Henry VIII did at the time. And what about Stockholm? So maybe I thought this Mary Rose sinking was bad, so if something similar happened in Stockholm, maybe they say the same thing. They sit there, that's just the biggest blunder ever.
I think it was similar that they put too many cannon on there and too much gold and everything
Don't get
else.
too, hasty with the hardware. What I can say. Whatever happened before it sunk, the Mary Rose was in Henry's fleet before that.
It was a flagship.
It was a flagship, exactly. And after an alliance with the Emperor Charles V of Spain, probably because they loaned all these boats, they become friends. England went at war with both France and Scotland with the Spanish in tow. It was Henry himself who landed at Calais on the 14th of July 1544 with an army of 30,000 men and besieged Boulogne, which surrendered on the 14th of September before the might of Henry's horde. So Henry did quite a bit. He got some France back. It was always, to and fro between them during these times. And these fighters just fought France all the time, it seemed. Every king had a bit of a scuffle with France. And Henry, after that, he died 3 years later in 1547 at the age of 55. By this time, he had become severely obese with a waistline of 54 inches, 140 centimetres. This could be traced back to
That is big.
Yeah, it wasn't because he ate all the pies. Well, he did that too, but he had a jousting accident from which he suffered a leg wound, which aggravated an earlier injury which doctors found hard to treat. And he suffered from this for the rest of his life, and it truly impaired his mobility, leading him to be carried about with the use of mechanical devices. And this was the last of the Henrys. He was gone. England could breathe a sigh of relief. No more Henrys. And they did some good, but mostly people would rather forget them. After Henry VIII's reign, the land was blighted by plague in 1563 as like an appendix afterthought for the Henrys were gone. There was a plague which ravaged England, and Portsmouth itself lost 300 of its 2,000 inhabitants. But life went on in Pompey, nevertheless, until the English Civil War came around. And that's the end of part 2 of my amazing trip
Horrible
through
Henrys. Horrible Henrys.
Yeah. I hope you learned something. I certainly did.
I did.
I can't pronounce a lot of things. That's what I learned. Anyway, how are we doing? The podcast, what's happening now?
Well, we're still live.
Has anyone watched us yet?
No, there's no one there.
Well, nothing.
I did say anyone there, question mark.
We need that ghost app that we had last time.
Yeah. Well, we'll work on it.
Anyway, but if you're watching this later, which you must be because you're not watching it now, thanks for watching. Please give us some comments. You can be horrible if you want. It's all right. But we should carry on because we've got another of our golden threads.
Oh, the golden thread.
So this is a top 10, and what are we doing for this top 10 this time?
I think we're going to do famous people born in Portsmouth, aren't we?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, excellent.
So Portsmouth is a big city, so there must be loads of famous people that were born here. Is that right, Simon?
There are quite a few, yes. And in fact, many more than we're even going to talk about here. But we've just picked out a few select choices. I'm going to go in with the first one. Is Christopher Hitchens.
Who's that in?
Christopher Hitchens.
I reckon he was a TV guy, wasn't he?
No, well, he was an author and a journalist.
Oh.
Some say a polemicist, but he did a lot of public speaking and debating on various subjects around faith, culture, politics and literature.
Oh, right.
He wrote 18 books. He was born in Portsmouth in 1949.
Oh, right.
And he has a famous brother as well, Peter Hitchens, who's also a journalist. He's a columnist, I think, for the Daily Mail.
Oh my God, the Anglo-Saxon Times of today.
Yeah, but Christopher Hitchens is a bit of a hero of mine.
Really?
He actually said of himself that he was an anti-theist. Other people would say atheist, but he said anti-theist, meaning that he saw all religions as false, harmful, and authoritarian.
I can see his point there, actually, because a lot of them are. A lot of them have a good side as well, but the trouble is, believing in nothing is just as harmful, surely, if you blink your eyes, not accepting any...
Well, I don't think anyone believes in nothing.
But isn't that what the antithesis of antithesis is?
No, because he endorsed free expression, scientific skepticism, and separation of the church and the state.
But isn't it being blinkered, saying there's all this world out there and there's no point to anything?
Well, I don't think he said there was no point to anything. He wasn't really a nihilist.
All I know is everything is nothing and nothing is everything.
But he said that he argued that science and philosophy are superior to religion as an ethical code of conduct for human civilization. Exactly. So his point was that religion was humanity's first attempt at civilization.
To me, it was the first.
Civilized.
It was the first attempt to control people, because back then there was no, there may be feudal kind of leaders, but there wasn't enough. People were causing problems, so they went, "There's this man in the sky. You're going to go to hell if you don't listen to him." But before that, it was they worship nature. So maybe they said the storm will kill you, or the typhoon will gust all over you. Anyway, I don't know. I'm interrupting you.
That's all right. He was born in Portsmouth, as I said, and no one knows where he was born exactly. We know he was born in Southsea, but his house is unknown, which is quite interesting.
Mystery.
Did a lot of research myself to try to find out which house he was born in, and there are no records of it.
Maybe we can do like a detective try and track that down.
Yeah, so if anyone does know anything about that, where he was born, that would be great to hear.
Yeah.
I did actually write a letter to his brother, Peter, a few years back.
Wow. Did you get any response?
I did, yeah. I got a letter back, which was from his PA, dictated by him.
Did he know where
which said he didn't know. No, he didn't know where his brother was born.
I find that very difficult to believe.
Other than it was in Southsea, and he said that maybe I could try inquiring of Carol Blue, who was Christopher's wife.
He hitched up with her.
Who lives in America.
Okay, well there you go. Keep at it, Simon. We want to hear how you get on with this Hitchens story.
Well, yeah, and I do have an ambition to try to found a statue of Christopher Hitchens, because we don't have one in Portsmouth.
If we can find out where he lived, then
he was a very important.
Even a plaque or something would be nice.
Yeah, he was a very important person, really.
I'll have to look into some of his works.
He discovered quite late on that his mother was Jewish. Didn't realise that. Didn't discover that until he was 38, and then sort of went on to identify as a Jew himself.
All right, so he had a turnaround on his.
Yeah, but he did evolve his thinking and his beliefs all the way through his life, because he was such a great reader that he read a lot of different philosophical and social critic type work.
Yeah.
And that sort of informed his thinking.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to look into his work, because I like to read all kinds of stuff. I don't consider myself. I'm kind of agnostic, I guess. I don't really. I know I'm spiritual, but.
And the definition of agnostic is you believe in God and you're quite happy as long as He leaves you alone.
Kind of thing, yeah. But I'm not really. I don't like belonging to any kind of group really, because I'm against segregation. I think we're all, as Bruce Lee said, under the sky, under this world, we are all one family. It just so happens that we look different. Good old Bruce. His philosophy.
Do a Bruce Lee episode.
And Bruce and your hero, Jimi Hendrix.
We'll do a Jimi Hendrix.
These people have got amazing, even though like Bruce was really into martial arts, I call him the Einstein of martial arts, because he transcended his the pugilistic form. You can relate all of his philosophy to anything. It's really interesting, some of his stuff. Anyway, we're getting off track a bit, so should we...
Yes, well, I'm still on Hitchens, just for a moment.
More Hitchens.
He was bisexual in his younger days. He had sexual relations with two male students at Oxford who later became Tory ministers, but he never, during the premiership of Margaret Thatcher, but he never revealed their names publicly, so nobody knows who that was.
Scandals.
He went on to do, he actually subjugated himself to waterboarding, which is a form of torture,
Right, yeah.
as you probably well know.
Is that they hold you underwater, don't they?
Yeah, I think they pour water over your mouth.
Oh, that's right,
they
yeah,
put
and a cloth.
a cloth over
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And it's supposed to be like sort of suffocating, feeling like suffocating and drowning. But he did that for journalistic purposes, I think. And he was said to be to have wit and eloquence in his speaking and debate, and he would often use verbal barbs and linguistic dexterity.
Ooh.
And the term hitch slap has also been used among his fans to define a verbal barb used to humiliate his opponents. So yes, he died of pneumonia.
Hitch slap. Sorry.
He died of pneumonia in 2011 after he had esophageal cancer.
So it wasn't too long ago he passed away.
No, it wasn't that long ago. But he was an avid smoker.
He didn't see
which probably didn't help.
He didn't see the COVID days in there.
No, didn't get that far. And apparently his last words were "capitalism downfall."
That's a good ending comment.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Capitalism sounds a bit like cataclysm.
It does.
Right, next one. Have you heard of Amanda Louise Holden?
I have, yeah.
I haven't, because he gave me these to read. Born the 16th of February 1971, she was an English media personality, actress and a singer.
Is.
Oh, she's still alive.
Yeah.
And she's only 5 years older
I think she was
than
on
me.
X Factor, I think.
Right, well, since 2007, she's been a judge on the television talent contest show Britain's Got Talent.
Now I know. Not X Factor.
Oh, now I know. She's a blonde one. It was blonde one. Is she blonde?
She may have been blonde at some stage.
She's quite pretty, I remember.
Yes.
Yeah, she co-hosts the National Hearts Breakfast radio show also. Well, I don't know why she's radio, because with those looks, with Jamie Theakston on weekday mornings. So that's Amanda. Hello, if you listen.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's listening, but
No.
that's it really.
Yeah. Hello to our listener.
That's the short one, so let's go for a longer one, shall we, Simon?
Okay, yes. Charles Dickens.
Oh, yeah, now you're talking.
Charles Dickens was born in Portsmouth.
Yeah, yep. I went to his little house. It's a museum.
Yes, it is. Little cobbled street there. It's just as it was when he was there, I think.
Yeah, I took my wife there. We walked around. It's really nice, really interesting.
So he wrote a lot of works, actually, but famously A Christmas Carol, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist.
Can I have some more, please, sir?
Tale of Two Cities.
Suits you, sir. Oh, no, that's something else.
So he was born in 1812, died 1870, and
he moved at quite an early age. He moved away from Portsmouth. That's what I heard. So he didn't do any writing.
I think he did move to London. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, he was well known for his fictional characters. So his characters became quite well known.
Yeah, I mean,
he left school at age 12 to work in a boot blacking factory.
Ooh.
When his father John was incarcerated in a debtor's prison.
Oh, wow.
So that's presumably where a lot of those stories come from, because a lot of the stories are about people in poverty, debtor's prisons, blacking factories, kids working in
slave
appalling
labour
conditions.
Sweat houses.
And he wrote 15 novels, 5 novellas, hundreds of short stories, non-fiction articles, lectured, performed readings, edited a weekly journal for 20 years.
He was a prolific.
He was. And he also campaigned vigorously for children's rights, education and other social reforms.
Wow, that's a legend. Right there.
And there is a statue of him actually in Guildhall Square, isn't there now?
Yes, okay. Yeah, I think I saw that. But read his books, because they still stand the test of time. There's another kind of literary guy who's lesser known, but his name was Christopher Logue. And he was born in 1926, and he died the same year as your matey Hitchens, 2nd of December 2011. He was an English poet associated with the British Poetry Revival, and on top of that, he was a pacifist. So he was born in Portsmouth, Hampshire, and brought up in the Portsmouth area. Logue was the only child of middle-aged parents, John and Molly Logue, who married late. He attended Roman Catholic schools, including St John's College, Portsmouth, Prior Park College, before going to Portsmouth Grammar School. Did you go to any of those?
None of those, no.
But on call up for the war, that's World War II, I guess, and he enlisted in the Black Watch and was posted to Palestine. But he was court-martialed in 1945 over a scheme to sell stolen paybooks. Make a bit on the side. And he was sentenced to 16 months imprisonment, served partly in Acre prison. and he lived in Paris also from 1951 to 1956. He was a quite great poet, modern poet, and modernish. He wrote this poem which I quite like called Last Night in London Airport. Last night in London Airport, I saw a wooden bin labelled Unwanted Literature is to be placed herein. So I wrote a poem and put it in.
He definitely had your sense of humour, I think.
Yeah, I like this. I'm a big fan of the more comic poets like John Hegley, John Cooper Clarke.
John Hegley, yeah.
You know, those kind of quite good poets, humorous. Even some of the feminist poets I quite enjoyed, like Wendy Cope, quite humorous.
Oh, I like Wendy Cope, yeah.
Yeah, there's some good stuff out
One
there.
of my favourite poems was by her about finding love on the bridge. Do you know that one?
I do.
Something along the lines of walking across the bridge.
There was
I found love.
There was one she wrote called Making Cocoa for Kingsley Amos.
That's well known, yeah.
And she said, I knew it wouldn't make much of a poem, but I loved the title. That was it. Something like that. Anyway, next one.
Well, Martin Amos, who I think was his son, was a good friend of Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, there you go. Segue.
Literary connections.
Wow. Any more literary people to mention?
No, but we've got some politicians floating about. So James Callaghan,
All right.
also known as Jim Callaghan, he was born in Portsmouth, 1912.
Irish descent, obviously.
Well, I guess so, yeah.
Unless he was not an O'Callaghan.
No. Yeah, so he was born in Portsmouth and he became Prime Minister.
Oh.
1976 to 1979. That's the year we were born.
We were born, yeah, both of us.
Leader of the Labour Party. He's the only person to have held all four great offices of state, being Chancellor of the Exchequer, Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, and of course Prime Minister. There is actually a James Callaghan Drive, which I think is on the top of Portsdown Hill.
Oh wow! Portsdown Hill's got a lot of mysteries.
I was going to mention Penny Mordaunt as well, who's a current MP.
Yeah.
And she was the one who, at the ceremony crowning of Charles, she was the one who walked in front of the procession with a very, very large sword.
Oh, right.
Which was so big, I don't know how she managed to carry it for all those hours. She actually went to school at Springfield, which is where I went to school.
Oh, okay.
She was born in Portsmouth.
Wow, there you go. Did you? But obviously before your time.
Well, after my time, I think. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we got old.
Why are we old?
Okay, right, don't go into meltdown. Let's just keep on track.
How many have we done now? It must be about 8.
We're halfway through, I think. Go on, go for it.
All I've got left is some honourable mentions. So
just do a couple of those then.
I'll do a couple of.
I've got a couple more to do.
This is a really good one. I'll do a couple of honourable mentions, and you do one more, and I'll do 2 more honourable mentions.
Yeah.
Okay. This first honourable mention, you might not know this, but there was a Austrian bodybuilder who was quite famous in the world of movies, and then went on into politics, becoming the mayor of California. And his name was Arnie Schwarzenegger. And he briefly lived and he trained in Portsmouth.
He did?
I think it was just a weekend or something. I don't know.
It wasn't long, as I understand it. Maybe a few months or something. But
he came here, and then after a week, he's like, "Get to the chopper."
I'll be back.
I won't be back. And I've got another one. This one, we mentioned him in every pod so far. So Arthur Conan Doyle, of course. He wasn't born here. He was born down in Scotland, in Edinburgh. But he had his practice here. He obviously is famous for the Sherlock Holmes stories and the Professor Challenger stories and loads of brilliant books. My favourite author. He practiced medicine in the city, and he played in goal for the amateur Portsmouth Association Football Club, which was the early iteration of Pompey FC. There you go. That's
very good.
That's 2 honourable mentions.
I've got another one here. Born here, Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
Oh, my dad named himself after Isambard in his email because he liked Breaking Bad, and Breaking Bad. He called himself what did he call himself? After the famous.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Breaking Bad?
No.
Oh my God!
So there is a statue of him here in Portsmouth where he was born. Born in 1806. So he was a British civil engineer and mechanical engineer. He was actually voted in a poll of greatest Britons as 2nd place after Winston Churchill.
Oh, okay.
So he's very highly regarded in Great Britain.
Wow.
But he built dockyards, the Great Western Railway, steamships, lots of bridges and tunnels. And again, at 15, his father was sent to a debtor's prison for debts of over 5,000. So another one.
Charlie boy.
There's another one, yeah.
Yeah.
After 3 months went by with no prospect of release, his father, Mark, let it be known that he was considering an offer from the Tsar of Russia, and then that forced the government to relent, and they issued him £5,000 to clear his debts in
Wow.
exchange for his promise to remain in Britain.
Wow.
And a good bit of business it was too.
Yeah, they didn't want him to go over to the Reds, did they?
Exactly.
So that was a good bargain plea. Do you
Clever,
think he did?
clever bit of politicking.
Do you think he was, play his cards and not go through with it?
I don't think he would have gone
would've?
through with it. I don't think he would have. He was a
Because
traitor.
you spent some time in Russia, haven't you? You've been
I did,
rushing about quite a bit,
Just a bit, yeah.
but mainly for the ladies, is what I heard.
Some ladies, some food. Mostly one lady, lots of food.
Those Russian ladies.
Brunel also designed, something I didn't know, designed prefabricated hospitals, which they sent 18 of these to Crimea
Wow.
during the conflict, during the war there, and the famous nurse Florence Nightingale worked in one of them.
Wow.
And performed her heroic duties.
She brought many men back to life.
Yes, and a lot of that seemingly was down to these prefabricated hospitals, because they incorporated the necessities of hygiene, access to sanitation, ventilation, drainage,
Wow. Bruno.
rudimentary temperature control.
Tell you what, I thought Henry VIII did a lot, but Bruno seemed to outdone even him. And more decent things, not just nice posh buildings.
And as for
Maybe.
stats, they treated approximately 1,300 patients in the main hospital that was there, and there were only 50 deaths.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
And before that hospital was used, the figure was 10 times that high,
What, the deaths?
the number of deaths.
Yeah. God. That's amazing.
Isn't
well, I've looked more into... Yeah, I've heard of this Isambard guy, but I haven't really looked into his life. What an amazing life he had. Well, let me do two more honourable mentions then. This is another famous author, Rudyard Kipling. He was obviously the author of The Jungle Book, many other books. A book called Kim, which I really liked, he wrote. He also was famous for his poetry. He did that really famous poem, Life something.
Oh, you mean If?
If.
Yes, brilliant poem, yeah.
That's a fantastic
Yeah,
poem.
look that one up.
I would
it's
read
fantastic.
it to you, but I don't want to bore you too much.
Yeah.
And also,
It's very good.
there was another famous author associated with Portsmouth who wrote The War of the Worlds, science fiction books. That was
Classic.
That was made into a radio show that scared America, terrorised America.
That's right. People
Thought
believed it was real, didn't they?
And A Time
And
Machine.
they panicked.
Time Machine's another classic.
Oh, Time Machine was brilliant, wasn't it?
That was made. There was a good film made of that, not the recent one, the one before, I think. Yeah, but he lived in Portsmouth during the 1880s. He spent 5 years in a foster home here. So maybe he saw some of those UFOs that you saw, or something. Okay, that's one more.
Yeah.
Davy Jones. You know when there's a locker at the bottom of the ocean with his name on it. This isn't the same guy. This was Davy Jones of the Monkees.
I remember him.
He's
The man with the tambourine, the lead singer.
We're the Monkees. Lived in Bedhampton, believe it or not.
Yeah, and he may still live there.
Ooh.
But yes, I think it was just on one of those first houses, just on the top of Portsdown Hill.
Portsdown Hill.
Yeah, Bedhampton Hill becomes Portsdown Hill, just up there. So I've got one last birth in Portsmouth. Peter Sellers,
Oh wow, what a legend.
CBE, who was an actor and comedian.
Loved him. Brilliant.
Born in 1925 and first came to prominence performing in The Goon Show on BBC Radio, which is a very famous TV series.
Yeah.
Famously loved by Charles, once Prince, now King. Who was in that? Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan?
Spike Milligan, Gardeny guy, the nature guy, Bill Oddie.
No, you're thinking of
Oh.
The Goodies.
Oh, the Goodies.
Yes, that was much later. But The Goodies was fantastic as well.
The Goon Show was
with
the
Dr.
best
Tim
one.
Gardner. Yeah, The Goon Show was one of the original classic comedy series.
Didn't that inspire the Pythons?
I think it did, yeah.
Yeah.
But Sellers also featured in a number of hit comic songs, apparently, and became most widely known as Chief Inspector Clouseau in the Pink Panther films.
Yes, fantastic.
He also played a role in Lolita and Casino Royale.
Yeah, okay, wow.
But he was born in Southsea, made his stage debut at the King's Theatre, which is still there in Southsea, when he was 2 weeks old, apparently. He was brought on stage as a baby.
Wow.
And he was considered by Turner Classic Movies as the greatest comic actor since Charlie Chaplin.
Wow. He did a film, is it called Being There?
Don't know that
It was one of his last films. And didn't he do stuff with Dudley Moore as well?
He may have done, yeah.
That's Peter Cook now.
No, Peter Cook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was
Dudley Moore.
another classic, but yeah. Peter Sellers, I'm sure he did a film called, one of his last films, which is brilliant. He did some brilliant stuff. My aging memory, I'm pretty sure I got that one right, but yeah.
Peter Sellers also lived in Muswell Hill. I made a note of that because I used to live in Muswell Hill and I used to walk past his house on the way to the tube station.
Oh, wow, cool.
I mean, he wasn't there at the time, but there was a plaque on the wall outside.
Yeah, so you've got to get the Hitchens plaque. Where we'll listen to your updates in future pods, hopefully, about that.
We must get in touch with Carol Blue. Maybe she knows, as
Carol Blue.
Peter, his brother, suggested.
Yeah. Wow, I think
Is that it? Have you got any more?
That's it.
No, that's it.
Well, I think we've overshot our time a little bit.
We have.
So I think we should call it a day there. And let's just wrap up about what we've learned today.
What have we learned? We learned all about the horrible enries.
Henrys, don't trust Henry. If you're a Henry listening to this, I haven't got anything against you, but I'm watching.
He does have a prejudice for
I'm
Henrys.
watching you. Also, what about our next pod? I think we're going to have a special guest, aren't we?
Oh, Lord Marshy.
Lord Marshy, of the swamp.
Marshy, the king of Lee Park.
Yeah, we got a nice little. We're not really going to plan this next pod too much because we're just going to.
No, we're going to talk philosophy, meaning of life,
and
bit of poetry.
Just
because
reminisce.
Marshy is a security guard, isn't he? Family man, lifelong poet, really, I think.
Yes.
And he did say he was either going to find one of his previous poems or maybe write a new one, especially for our podcast.
Wow, that would be amazing.
And I might even share some of my poems as well.
But I'll have to dig up some of mine as well. We can have
have you got
poetry. I've got poems.
Have you? I didn't know that.
But
You
Marshy
told me you wrote poems.
Yeah, Marshy told me once. I was a member of a poetry club, and I travelled around America meeting all my poetry friends. Yeah, there's a lot you don't know about me.
Oh yeah, he's a secret.
I remember
secretive man.
Graham Marsh had a boulder dropped on him when he was a baby.
A boulder?
A boulder fell on him when he was a baby.
That sounds like something out of a cartoon.
And his mum ran over, pulled the boulder off him, and he was laughing. that tells you all you need to know.
That tells you something about the man.
But we'll find out more on our next pod.
And he is known as Swampy, isn't he? Because of his surname, Marsh.
Yeah.
And he's also known as Marshy for obvious reasons. All sorts of positive derivatives and variants thereof.
Yeah, and there were lots of variants
The
and
Marshster,
factors which we never would have met.
Swampmeister.
Without him as the linchpin, we wouldn't have met.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have got your job at
But
let's cover it next time.
We'll cover that next time.
Yeah.
All right, we could chat for hours, as you can hear.
Be good.
But be good to each other. I nicked that from somewhere. See you on the next pod.
Yeah. Do the music to us, Phil.
All right.
Who have we got? It's the usual. Our favourite.
We have to go out on my cousin.
His cousin's
My cousin's. I saw him the other day. His name's Raymond Charlton. Ray Charlton.
It's his old band, isn't
And
it?
his old band. He's got a new band now called Calavera, and they play at the Wedgeridrums often. So look out for them. But this is Neon City again.
And this is about Portsmouth, isn't it?
It's about Portsmouth, apparently.
Yes. Here we go. Bye bye.